we are prepared to believe that all these people are driven by uncontrollable reefer madness craving, we must conclude that they find something in the experience attractive and useful. And yet there is very little open exploration of these uses with the growing exception of its value as a medicine. Even here, government officials want to mute the discussion out of a fear expressed by the chief of the Public Health Service when in 1992 he discontinued the only legal avenue to medical marijuana. Quote, if it is perceived that the Public Health Service is going around giving marijuana to folks, there would be a perception that this stuff can't be so bad. It gives a bad signal, close quote. The government has until very recently refused to acknowledge that cannabis has any value, even medicinal. But there are millions of citizens who have discovered through their own experience that it has a large variety of uses they consider valuable and that the health costs are minimal. The large population of marijuana users is a subculture, one that has been present in this country since the 1960s. 3 decades ago, it was an open, vocal, active, articulate culture on and off the campus. Today, it is silent and largely hidden because most users, understandably, do not want to stand up and be counted. They have more than the law to fear. Urine testing is now a fact of life in corporate America. A positive test can lead at the very least to a stint in a drug treatment program, and at most to the loss of a job, career destruction, even imprisonment. Users are very mindful of this minefield, and most find ways around it. Even more pervasive, and in some ways more pernicious, is the stigmatization attached to cannabis use. Young people often experience little of this, at least among their friends. But as they grow older and move into increasingly responsible and visible positions, they become much more guarded. Many believe correctly that colleagues would regard them as deviant if they knew. This stigmatization is abetted by the media, which have created and perpetrated a stereotyped image of potheads as young, hirsute, slovenly dressed ne'er-do-wells or disreputable, irresponsible, and socially marginal hedonists who use cannabis only to hang out and party. One reason for the fierce resistance to marijuana is the fear that it will somehow taint middle-class society with pothead culture. Now, there is no denying that many, especially young people, use cannabis primarily for partying and hanging out, in the same way that many more use beer. And most non-users, until they become aware of its medical value, believe that smoking to party and hang out pretty much defines the limits of its usefulness. This stereotype is powerful, and reactions ranging from puzzlement to outrage greet claims that this party drug could be useful as medicine or for any other purposes. People who make claims about its usefulness run the risk of being derided as vestigial hippies. Under these circumstances, it is not surprising that most people who use cannabis do so behind drawn curtains, alone or with others who share some appreciation of its value. It is unfortunate that those who, from personal experience, are aware of its usefulness are so reluctant to be public about it. I believe it would be good for the country if more people in the business, academic, and professional worlds were known to be marijuana users. The government has been able to pursue its policies of persecution and prosecution largely because of the widespread false belief that cannabis smokers are either irresponsible and socially marginal people or adolescents who experiment, learn their lesson, and abandon odd use of the drug. That lie is unfortunately perpetuated even when those who know better remain silent. It's time to let the truth come out. Just as the gay and lesbian out of the closet movement has done so much. Just as the gay and lesbian out of the closet movement has done so much to decrease the level of homophobia in this country, when the many people of substance and accomplishment who use cannabis come out, it will contribute to the diminution of cannabinophobia. Not many well-known people are identified as users of cannabis. A few politicians have been outed by their enemies. One went so far as to claim he did not inhale. And some would-be political appointments have failed because of history of marijuana use. Occasionally, a screen star, musician, or professional athlete is arrested for possession. Aside from Allen Ginsberg, some popular musicians, and a few notables from the beat and hippie movements, few people in the public eye have voluntarily acknowledged cannabis use. Except for one well-known scientist, the physicist Richard Feynman, academics have been most cautious. Feynman, by courageously acknowledging his ongoing use of marijuana, won the respect and appreciation of many and the enmity of others. Fear of coming out is, of course, not without foundation. As long as the present stereotyped understanding of marijuana use and its effects continue to prevail, anyone who acknowledges using it will risk being taken less seriously from then on. It is thought that potheads could not possibly considered mature, serious, responsible, and credible. Yet only those who actually use cannabis teach us how useful it is. There was a time not so long ago when it was generally assumed that any use of marijuana was merely recreational. This was certainly true at the time I wrote Marijuana Reconsidered. The chapter on marijuana as medicine was concerned with past and potential uses. There was no overt and little covert use of cannabis as a medicine at that time. Now, there are many thousands of patients who use cannabis medicinally. And as the ranks of these patients grow, so does the number of people who observe for themselves how relatively benign the substance is. 74% of Americans believe that cannabis should be made available as a medicine. Very few people have held this belief in 1971. Currently, it is generally thought that there are two generic categories of marijuana use, recreational and medicinal. But in fact, many uses do not fit into these categories without stretching their boundaries to the point of distortion. They fall into a third category, one that is even more diverse and for that reason more difficult to label. It includes such disparate uses as the magnification of pleasure in a host of activities ranging from dining to sex, the increased ability to hear music and see works of art, and the ways in which it appears to catalyze new ideas, insights, and creativity, to name a few. Furthermore, at its edges, which are fuzzy, there is some conflation with both medicine and recreation. Yet the preponderance of these uses falls into this broad and distinctive category that I call enhancement. This is the class of uses which is generally least understood or appreciated by non-cannabis users. It is also the case that some people who use or who have used marijuana may not be aware of some, if not most, of the enhancement possibilities. One category of cannabis utility that we have studied is its usefulness as a medicine. Because there is not at this time a systematic